guess the mood that I'm actually, I guess the mood that I'm going for with most of the concepts that I actually draw, I guess the mood that I'm going for is actually, a dark mood. I guess when I say dark, I mean that when I make a concept, whether it's a character or the environment, usually I kind of try to set a kind of a mood with both. You know, basically, I try to set a dark mood where you have to feel uh, some type of very primitive emotion, you know. So, like, for instance, if I make a wall, a lot of times I'll try to make it where there's sort of an element of shock value to the viewer's psyche. You know, like there could be spiky protrusions coming out of the wall. You know, stuff that you see that's not exactly super original, but I just put my own spin on it. You know, I like to use red a lot, whether it's in colors of the earth, the ground, cliffs, mountains, rocks, even trees sometimes. In reality, you'd never see a red tree or a blood red tree or whatever, but I like to use that color because I feel like people associate it with flesh, they associate it with blood, with rage. So basically, how what I'm trying to get across to you is I'm trying to make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. Honestly, I love the shock value factor, whether I do it in a good way, like I mean, whether I'm good at it or not. I like to try to do that. So basically, I like to do things like that. I usually like to go for characters that, like my concepts of characters, I try to make them look a certain way where there's a lot of different types of reactions that a person could have all at once. That's what I always try to do. I try to make it a very multi-dimensional thing. Like where, the character could be kind of sexy to a degree in a way, but then at the same time it's kind of scary in a way. And then it's kind of freaky in a way where there's some parts of it where it just kind of weirds you out to even look at it. Like whether it's the eyes or the bone structure or something, or if it's just a monster that's just kind of just really gross and scary. I try to make layers to it to where you can look at it from many different ways, where it's not just one thing. And I'll go even back to like I would call them rugged type of backgrounds I try to design. Like deserts where I like fire a lot. So a lot of times you'll see like flames, or you'll see supernatural phenomena. Stuff that doesn't really necessarily exist, or at least that you wouldn't believe to exist in this reality. You know, um, Things like that. A lot of times I like gore, so I'll try to add elements of skeletons to it, and sometimes even beings will be impaled, or corpses will be hanging, or things like that. But I do that because I like that style. I like to see it visually, and I like people like I put it like this: if I look at something and I get an emotional reaction from it, I want to. I guess when it comes to art, I want to share those reactions. It's kind of like when you watch a movie, and it's the difference between just simply watching a movie and you're like, oh, that didn't really do anything for me, opposed to where you watch a movie and you see something that just kind of does something to you. It doesn't even have to be a bad thing. It could be honestly a positive emotion. You could just be something really exciting, like a really exciting car chase or something, or a scene where it's filmed really, really way up high, and you have that kind of emotion where you're afraid that the character's going to fall or whatever. And, it really hits you hard in a way. That's what I at least go for. I mean, it's funny because obviously if I create a concept, I like the concept myself, so it affected me in a way, and in me drawing it is kind of just a way of me getting thoughts and ideas and visions out of my own head. But basically, that when I try to set a mood, um, there's just a lot of elements that I go for. I try to go for very primal emotions, or at least I try to create images that would cause a very primal emotion in a person that would see it. Also, one of the things that I like to do a lot is I like to try to convey what some would call, contrasting attributes, whether it's like a, character's, emotional type of personality, or, contrasting with the way that they are physically, or it's physical contrast. Sometimes it is, usually I do that all the time with a character, physically. It could be simply like, let's say a character that is structurally, the bone structure could be a lanky frame, but the character has a lot of volume on their body. So those are two things that contrast. Or, could also be something as simple as a character is a very upbeat character. Like they're very upbeat and innocent to a degree, but then they're very sadistic at the same time. And a lot of times when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm taking, well, obviously a lot of times I'm taking, uh, how can I say this? I'm taking attributes from my own personality. Because, I mean, a lot of people, obviously, you don't know me because I'm just a person talking in a video, but, you know, I'm a person who likes to have fun. So, like, I'm a grown man and I'm 30 years old, but I like to have fun. So, there's a childlike side of me, but at the same time, there's a very sinister and sadistic side of me. There's also a very violent side. So I try to incorporate that into a lot of my art. Like it's kind of like, you look at it this way. You look at it like the animal kingdom. In the animal kingdom, just like with people, there's very light sides to everything, and there's very dark sides at the same exact time. So it's kind of like the idea of, layers, the idea of duality, of a lot of different, almost like opposing things going on all at once, or opposing things, or opposing forces, or seemingly opposing, you know, um, combined into one thing. So I like to do that a lot with concepts, whether whether it's character, or it's the environment. Because sometimes, let's say for instance, I could have a environment where it's snowing, right? But in certain places, there's flames, or there's magma, and it really doesn't make any damn sense in reality, because I mean, come on, obviously, obviously that doesn't make sense. But just for the visual effect, and like I said, the duality, like think of it like a video game where there's places where are perfectly safe and natural, and there's no harm there. There's no like harm type of element to it. But then if you step a certain amount of feet to another spot, that very spot might be incredibly dangerous. And see, when I do that, I like to. It's because of the emotion. Like I want someone to get that sort of feeling, because personally, I like that concept. I just, because I like thrills. So, you know, I like danger, like a sense of danger, physical danger. So um, you know, I try to convey that in art, like I said, like things with spiny protrusions and hooks, and things like that sticking out of walls and rocks and sticking out of the ground sometimes, and or sometimes I'll even make things that will look like sort of like trees, but they have, they're a little bit twisted and they have very spiny things sticking out of them because it kind of implies that like if you were to fall on that or be pushed into it or whatever, that you could get, seriously injured, and that adds an element of excitement to the whole thing. So visually, even if you don't really pay attention to it subconsciously, your subconscious or the part of your subconscious that has a need for that type of thrill, that fulfills that need just by you looking at that image. And that's how that's well that's really the I mean, I know I'm just talking, I'm just fucking ranting. Excuse my language. I'm trying to keep this this kid friendly, this video. But what I mean is subconsciously it will feed a need of yours that maybe you don't even know you have, but it's a normal human need, and that's what I try to do with art. And when I make music, um, like the music you'll hear in this video and all the little uh rough concepts that you see in it is my art and music that I made. So you know, well, whether you like it or not, uh, you be watching the friggin' video, you're watching it, so whatever, just watch it. But whether you like it or not, I made it, and basically, it's just an expression of things that are inside of me. It's just an expression of thoughts, energies, and emotions that are in me and that are in, pretty much everyone else, whether it's, something you acknowledge or even know. It's just like, for instance, I like to use the color black like a lot. A lot of my characters, I like to make their skin not brown, not like what they say a black person is, not like me, not brown, but black, but straight up charcoal black. Because I don't know, I guess something I like about seeing black as a color of skin on a character, like a creature, or even if it's a much more humanoid character or whatever, creature. I like to see the dark skin because, well, not dark skin, it's just black, black like a gorilla, like gorilla black, gorilla midnight black, charcoal black. I love that black because I guess it's just menacing. It's kind of like why, I'll give you something about me. One of my favorite characters, that's a well-known famous character, is Venom. And the reason why I love Venom is because the look of Venom. Venom is one of the most menacing, intimidating characters. Just for I guess it's just the bone structure, the musculature, the hulking aspect, the teeth, the way he moves, and a lot of that has to do with like the personality things, or things that you could attribute to something that might look like that. Certain. It's almost like an image of a concept of someone's personality. If that makes any sense at all. But I use black to get that type of effect. Like a lot of times I'll have a character, and it's a very hulking, very menacing looking character. And a lot of times I'll make them like their skin or their fur or whatever will be like kind of just jet black. Almost like they look like a silhouette kind of. That's what I'm going for. I want them to look like a shadow. It's I want you to have that feeling like, when I don't know if it's ever happened to you, but you ever seen like a bug when the lights are off and it looked like three times bigger when the lights were off and it just kind of looked like a hulking mass. It was just like a big black mass. And it probably scared the crap out of you when you first saw it. And maybe like, probably after you killed it when you turned the lights on, like minutes later, it didn't even look that big anymore. It's just like, it just lost all of that primal fear that ran through your body when you first saw it. That's what I'm trying to go for. And a lot of times I contrast that with many times I'll make the character actually a very attractive character. They will be attractive, but they'll have that coloration in the skin. Like they'll be, just jet black, pearly white teeth, jet black. Usually the eyes will be a very bright color, so it's a contrast thing. The hair a lot of times will be white. It's a contrast thing, but I just love that silhouette look, that dark, you know, that black, super black look. Like not on me. I don't want it. I'm already black, but I'm brown. I'm not that black, man. I'm not friggin' Gorilla Midnight black. But you know what I'm talking about. So that's one thing I really love to do a lot. I mean, sometimes I don't know, it gets old with me sometimes drawing it, but I just love seeing it. So I use that a lot. A lot of characters. Um, I just love the dark black. Another one of my favorite characters I've seen was the Van Helsing werewolf. You know the one Hugh Jackman turns into the black werewolf, and it's just that's an awesome concept. I mean, it's just like it just has something to it. It's just that jet black, mass and hulking mass type of look. It's just really cool. And another thing that I like to do a lot too is I like to contrast the look of a very like let's say culture, because a lot of these characters I make or they'll be like a race of something, like they'll be like the Land of Shadow native is it that's actually the white haired black skinned character that I draw a lot of, and usually they're drawn with wings because they're supposed to almost be like a what you would call like an inverted angel type of character, almost like they're a very divine, powerful being, like a creator sort of being. Um, but at the same time, they're very sadistic and cynical, you know. So it's kind of that thing, and a lot of times have somewhat of a god complex because they're just, they're really in reality they're looking at everything from a much higher standpoint. So they just have a tendency to be like that. That's kind of the thing I'm going for. But I try to make them have a much darker, like literal dark look to them. Yeah, duality is something that I really like to play with when it comes into you know art concepts that I make. So a lot of times I like to make a very primitive look for characters. Like I mean very what's the word I'm looking for? Minimalistic looking, like loincloths and maybe simple stuff like some barbarian type stuff, like loincloth and friggin' some gauntlets, um you know, and maybe some weapons, and that's pretty much it. Because for the most part, these characters' bodies are very much animal, so they're living in an environment where they don't really need necessarily, well, because of their anatomy, they don't really need a lot of the human necessities. I mean, but the contrast is I like to make it like parts of the environment a lot of times are very advanced and hyper mechanical. So it's almost like, I'll give you an example. Like there will be spaceships and, you know, um, buildings, you know, with very mechanical type of doors and windows and high tech things like that. That's like, integrated circuitry type of stuff. But at the same time, these beings that are occupying it within themselves are very minimalist, like they kind of look like they came just straight out of a out of the jungle or something a lot of times, but they're in a world that's still very advanced. Not it's not like they necessarily need the technology to sustain themselves. Really, it's more or less a means of shelter and means of defensive and offensive types of weaponry. Really, it's a just like how we have cell phones. We don't necessarily have a house that has like a security system and cameras built into everything and a door that you need a laser scan to get into. But what I like to do concepts, I like to put things like that right smack and dab in the middle of like a rainforest or a sort of wasteland, Wild West desert type of looking, thing, and usually the characters are not going to be so advanced looking. Some of them at least. A lot of times, even if I go for a minimalist look, I go for that alien straight off the spaceship type of look. Like just straight up onesie, one color. Like they look like they just either came off the spaceship or they came out of they just came out the damn tank. Like, they're just a fresh clone or, fresh chimera or whatever, straight out of, a freaking tank, or wherever. So I like that type of look, you know, where it's very primitive but also very advanced. So I would say, um, when I try to set a mood, I usually try to set a mood uh that many things are very contrasting, because what I like to do is I like to find it's kind of sounds sick, but what I really am going for is I'm really going for a pleasure and pain type of medium. Like I'm trying to make you feel two different types of ways at once, or many different types of ways at once. But in the end, it all boils down to something that's pleasurable. So I try to scare you a little bit, you know, make the characters in environments and things, appealing to a person. But at the same time, I have to push the envelope enough to have some negative reactions. So, the contrasting feelings and emotions basically bring about an effect that would make it overall appealing to you, if that makes any sense. So basically, that's just what this video is about. It's about, you know, how I try to set a certain type of mood for, concepts that I make, like what I'm trying to convey, or or a lot of times if it's music that I'm making, it's the same thing. I'm trying to set a certain type of vibe, you know, because all I'm really doing is I'm taking internal aspects of myself and pushing it out in a creative way. And, you know, I guess basically if you don't like it, well then go somewhere. But if you like it, then what I'm trying to do just worked. So that's the video. Like, comment, subscribe, and share.